everyone, welcome back to a new session on Entrepreneur Spotlight. And today we have with us, oh my god, the most awaited guest of our YouTube channel, that is Chirantan Bhabhra, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So, let me give a small brief about you.
Yeah.
So, Chirantan Bhabhra, sir, was a student of IIMA and he had worked in organizations such as PNG. Oh my god, just PNG. It's a dream, right? So, one more thing is like entrepreneur journey started with SnapBizz, a retail tech startup, followed by stint in Udaan, and now Sir is having a service business of training and coaching. And basically, Sir is a storyteller and a storytelling coach. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all great. It's great to be around here. It's great to talk to students. It's always great to come to campuses, and the energy is quite inspirational.
So, after seeing your profile, I just had a question. So, your transition from working with such a big organizations like PNG, Udaan, and coming to teaching. So, why?
Well, I would like to connect the dots way back to my childhood. Probably, I've seen my father was a teacher of Hindi, great, lasting impressions on people's lives through the method of teaching. Um, I think the joy of creating a lasting impression which changes people's life, even if it's a small 2%, 10% change that people do in the way they approach careers and life in general, is very rewarding. And the other reason is related to the process of doing a corporate training or teaching, which is I get an instant gratification in the eyes of the audience. I can see whether they're excited about something or not so much, and then I have to change my tack so that I still am able to add that value to them, which I promised, and that keeps me on my toes. I don't get tired of doing this. That's, I think, a good enough uh, reflection or a feedback telling me that's the right space I am.
Sir, you are a part of SnapBizz as having an entrepreneur journey. Can you please elaborate about it?
Sure. So SnapBizz was a retail technology company back in 2014. It was started. We gave retail point of sale billing machines to Kirana stores, and thereby getting billing data and by creating a data platform out of it uh, to sell it to FMCG companies and thereby creating revenues for us. That was the business model. Having worked in Procter for close to 9 years, there was an internal calling to be in a startup, do a startup, and that's the reason I was there. And I would have done almost everything possible under the sun while being in SnapBizz, from product to design to sales to strategic alliances to investor relations, PR. But most of my time was spent towards creating strategic alliances, meeting investors, raising funds, hiring the right set of folks, and sales to an extent. So I was handling the entire FMCG industry interaction, investor interaction, and that's what most of my work would have been through those 5 years. Very rewarding journey, uh, very rewarding journey in the sense, many learnings. But if I have to just pick out one or two, one is one has to be ready for any eventuality. There'll be a lot of bad days and some good days, and you have to live for those good days, and you have to have the hope that the good days will multiply and the bad days will come down. And another key learning that I have from that point is that pedigree is a bit overrated. It doesn't matter whether you are from a grade B school or whatever big technology company or whatever you've done in the past. What matters is in that period of the company or the startup, can you get things done
Yes.
wherever you are? So I think those two will be my top of mind learnings. There are many, but I think that's what I would like to share.
Sir, I'm a sales enthusiast. Okay, so I think storytelling plays an important role while negotiating or taking a transaction or having a deal with the customer. So I want to know what is the importance of storytelling in leadership, sales, and startups.
Sure. Very few people say I'm a sales enthusiast. So you're among that rare circle, and I have a lot of respect for people who are enthusiastic about sales, because eventually all of us do become salesmen of some sort. We are always selling something or the other in our personal and professional lives, whether it's internal or external, within a company or within a family. Eventually, we are all trying to convince someone to do something or give us something all the time, right? So it's a great skill to have, and if you have enthusiasm towards it, nothing can be better. As far as storytelling towards these three things that you asked for, leadership, sales, and startups, the concept of storytelling is similar. The the principles behind storytelling are similar, which are used in businesses or in life or in movies. They remain similar. The applications in these three verticals especially can differ. Um the leadership storytelling is especially important because in this day and age, a lot of leaders struggle to drive or rally people around a certain vision, a certain change of strategy, something that they want the entire organization to follow.
Yes.
Usually, they would adopt the stick policy. They say, do this or else. The KRAs are there to be. But how do you instill trust within people? How do you say trust is a value that we have as a company? We should all trust each other. How do you instill things like you two guys have to cooperate with each other? How do you instill things like we all will work with integrity? There could not be any KRAs for that as such, right? So for that, those kind of values, visions that you are trying to portray and instill with the entire organization, storytelling plays a really good role, where people would understand and adopt those ideas when those ideas are told in form of stories. When you tell somebody that if somebody worked with integrity, this is what happened as a result to our company, and when somebody did not, what happened, and so on, right? So there are enough and more stories in people's life that the leaders can bring about from their own experiences, from experiences of other leaders, from experiences of celebrities that people know, and so on, right? So that's as far as leadership storytelling is concerned. I work with a lot of startups also. Storytelling concepts can be used to make good startup pitches. I work with the founders directly, and I work with incubators and cohorts of startup founders. One of the biggest challenges that founders have is what will make that investor invest in me versus somebody else in the same idea. Because in that area, usually the investor is seeing 5 or 6 decks or presentations every day. So how do you differentiate? There also concepts of storytelling help. Things like take one person human story as a customer or a prospective customer that you have, and then zoom out and say there are so many people like that, right? So Chirantan is one person who wants delivery of food and is not getting that time to go to a restaurant and buy it, and he would like to buy it online. Hey, let's zoom out and see how many more Chirantans are there in the country, is a better way to say, versus just presenting a slide saying there are 5 million people who want food delivery online. There's a basic difference. So this is just one concept of storytelling which can be applied to startups. So the role of storytelling in startups is usually towards getting the investor attention and the money and the right initial hires, because the same story of your startup, why did you start that company, is a very important thing for somebody to join you early stage. They are not joining you for money, of course. They're joining you for a belief. And what did that belief led you to do as a founder is important. So there could be stories around that. So that is something I do with startups. Finally, with sales, storytelling again plays a very critical role. People do not remember numbers, right? But people remember the numbers when presented in form of a story, right? Data has a story to tell. Every data has a story to tell when presented in the right context. Every presentation slide, the PPT slides that people make, and the plethora of them, uh, every slide can tell you a story, right? Provided you think of it like a story. A sales story can also be used by telling a prospective client what you did with some other client as a story. Hey, I met somebody else in the similar domain in some other company. This was his name. We worked with that person 2 months back. This was the problem. This is what we solved. Uh, and this is how the relationship is now. Now let's start with the presentation. So what have I done in that process? I've already sold you an idea
Yes.
by telling you how my company worked well with somebody else. Now, who's the hero in that story? It's not you or your company. You're the mentor. The hero is that other person who had the problem,
Yes.
and he solved his problem through you. Right? So you are the Katappa of that Bahubali. You're not the Bahubali yourself.
Sir, basically, startups is like a journey of a lot of efforts, a lot of risks, and finally, you get rewards after a lot of sweat onto the ground. So, can you just say one winning formula out of the many, which can be useful to our viewers who are actually the going to be entrepreneurs?
Well, if I knew this, I would have already been a very, very successful entrepreneur. But there's no one single thing that can lead you to it. There are many things that have to come together to be able to do that, which is the reason why 90% of the startups do not succeed. Uh, but one thing that I've seen good startups do very commonly, especially from a winning formula standpoint, is try to fail faster than others. Right? There are many kind of ideas you can work on the domain that you're working on, and if you're able to find alternatives to your solution, and if one thing fails, you have something else to present to your customer, and if you have hosts of such alternatives, you're able to do test and run as quickly as possible and fail in 8 out of 10 of them faster than others, then that can help you get to a winning formula faster. That the speed of execution there matters. That could be one way. There are many other ways, but this is top of mind that comes to me.
So some of our committee members who are actually innovation students have got to know that you will be here. So they have gave me a couple of questions to ask to you. So the first question goes, how do you approach creating engaging and impactful content for different audiences?
It's a very nice question. Um, Engagement of audience is very, very, very important. People who have been through corporate trainings would know that many a time sitting through an 8 hour or 16-hour course can be belaboring for them. It's not easy as an audience. Human attention span, as researched recently, is now about 8 seconds. The first time in the history of mankind we have beaten goldfish on attention span, and goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. So in that scenario, it's important for you to keep them engaged. And I try to create most of my content experiential, following a very simple cycle of telling a concept, taking relevant examples for that audience, and then doing learning by doing. Right? So an exercise, a case study, peer learning, discussion, or gamification. All of that works in terms of learning by doing. Because nobody learns by just putting something on a presentation or on a board. Uh, that works for you to get good marks in 10th, but not as a skill that you want to learn and reapply and change something as a behavior. For example, you coach people for behaviors, and you train people for skills, and both of them are not acquired purely by a one-way communications. You got to bring them relevant examples. So if I'm doing a storytelling course for finance auditors, I'll probably use more finance related examples to tell them versus, let's say, sales or a category manager of a large e-commerce company. And the same applies to, let's say, leadership versus junior management or middle management. The difference has to be brought on in terms of examples, and then you support it with learning by doing, exercise based understanding of things, and let them do things. Unless they, so 70% of my content through the day is engagement and them talking and doing something, and that makes, I think, I hope, it makes an impact.
And the next question goes, in your opinion, what makes a story compelling in a business context?
uh, the story in business context becomes compelling by first understanding the audience. to start with. If your understanding of audience is not thorough, then the story will fall flat, right? Whether that's narrative is being presented with a presentation, like using a PPT, or without a presentation, like just you're telling a story of 2 3 minutes to somebody. Unless you know the other person really, really well, what are their needs? What are their fears? What are the top questions they have in mind, internal or external, right? That is the first step to a compelling story, to create a story. Uh, the, the second point is about something I would like to say, the most important point first. You got to bring the most important point of your narrative up front. Unlike a movie where the suspense is revealed towards the end, you cannot enter a board meeting room of a business and say, Dil tham ke baithiye, ladies and gentlemen. Aapko, towards the end of this presentation, you'll get a revelation. It will not work like that. Yes. Got to tell them initially what they can expect through that 30-minute presentation of yours, and what's the overall basis of that narrative, kind of a trailer of sorts, which um, which in business parlance is also called executive summary, right? So that needs to be presented. That helps you keep the narrative intact and strong. And one universal story structure that people can use even in business is that of a character context, a conflict, and a resolution. Right? All great stories use the same formula over and over again in all movies. There's a character and conflict. There's a character and context. The character faces a conflict, and finally resolution happens. In business, also similar structures can be used. The character in this case can be a function, a team, or an individual. The conflict is what has happened because of a circumstance or event. And how do you propose a resolution? The resolution has things like adopt this new idea, extra funding, give me extra time. It could be anything. The resolution can be achieved in many ways, but that universal story structure can be used. Uh, these are, maybe I would say, three areas which can apply as in business storytelling. There are more, but I would like you to keep these three in mind to start with.
Coming to the end of the video, so sir, one advice for the young entrepreneurs over there.
Well, if you're getting into it, get into it with all your heart and soul. As I said in my first question, there will be more bad days than good days. So you have to be the most hopeful about that idea, and the most, your belief in it has to be the most versus anyone else, versus the investors, versus your team, versus anyone else. There'll be enough and more detractions. There'll be more people coming to you and say this cannot happen, but you got to keep going. You just got to keep going and show up every day and do it, and magic will happen.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much, viewers, for watching the whole video. And don't forget to hit a thumbs up. And here is Lola Shivani signing off from JAGSoM School of Management.